Hereby, I open this academic ceremony in which Chiara Stival will defend the academic thesis Epidemiology and Determinants of Obesity in Italy and Europe before and after the COVID-19 era. May I invite you to present a summary of your study and the conclusions of your thesis.
Thank you. Dear Prorector, dear members of the Assessment Committee, thank you. And now I'm going to present the results of my PhD on the epidemiology and the determinants of obesity in Italy and Europe before and after the COVID-19 pandemic. Obesity is defined as a complex multifactorial disease associated to several chronic non-communicable diseases, including cardiovascular diseases, type 2 diabetes, and several types of cancer. Obesity is also associated to an impairment in mental health. In the world, the prevalence of obesity in adults is approximately 16% and 7% in children and adolescents. What is more concerning is that the obesity prevalence has more than doubled since the last 30 years in adults, and it has grown even at a faster rate in youth. In addition, in several countries in the world, obesity prevalence reaches 30% or even more. In addition, in the European region, obesity ranks as fourth among the major causes of death. As you all know, in early 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic started spreading in the world, and so the governments from most of the countries worldwide were forced to impose strict regulation to stop the spread of the virus. This led to huge changes in the daily habits and lifestyles of the population worldwide, and it has also led to an increase in exposure to some of the main risk factors of obesity development. So, within my team, the Laboratory of Lifestyle Research in Mario Negri Institute, we decided to study the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on weight gain in the general Italian population and older adult population. To do that, we decided to assess what was the situation before the pandemic. So I assessed the prevalence and the correlates of obesity in Italian adults and European adults. And I also assessed the prevalence of obesity and the prevalence and the correlates of obesity and poor physical activity in youth from northern Italy. My last project aimed to assess what is the current relevance of obesity and excess body weight, but also preventable behavioral risk factors in the main medical literature. My first project aimed to assess the prevalence of obesity in European adults and was based on a cross-sectional study conducted before the pandemic on 12 European countries, and approximately 11,000 adults, among other information, self-reported their height and weight that were used to compute their BMI. As I found that the prevalence of overweight and obesity combined is approximately 48% in Europe, and 13% is the prevalence of obesity. As you can see from the map, the darkest areas represent those countries with higher obesity prevalence, and these are located in Eastern and Northern Europe. I found that obesity prevalence in Europe is higher in women, and obesity and overweight together is higher in men. I found also a direct association of obesity prevalence with age, and indirect association with socioeconomic status and level of education. I also had the opportunity to compare my results with those from a previous study conducted in 2010 on 10 common countries. And overall, I found that in these 8 years, obesity prevalence increased by 2%, and Italy and France were reconfirmed in both surveys as the countries with lower obesity prevalence. My second project aimed to assess the prevalence of obesity in children from northern Italy and the correlates of obesity and poor physical activity. I used data from 2 cross-sectional surveys that regularly monitor the prevalence and the correlates of obesity in youth. It is important to say that northern Italy is one of the areas with lower obesity prevalence in Italy, and this is true not only for children but also for adults, because in Italy there is a strong north-south gradient for obesity prevalence. In this study, I confirmed that prevalence of obesity in northern Italy is lower compared to Italian estimates, with prevalence in children reaching 5% and in adolescents 2%. Measures of height and weight for children were measured, whereas for adolescents were self-reported. One important result of this study was the strong role of families in the development of obesity and poor physical activity. I found that a low parental level of education, higher birth weight, and living in families with parents with at least one parent overweight or obese were all factors associated with the childhood obesity and poor physical activity. For adolescents, I also found a strong association between living with obesity or being poorly active and an impairment in mental health. In fact, those adolescents who reported living with obesity or being poorly active were those with higher symptoms of irritability, nervousness, depression, and who had been victims of bullying episodes. Then, I studied the impact of the pandemic in the general Italian population and also on physical activity habits. I used data from a longitudinal study conducted in Italy in early 2020 and with a follow-up 2 years later in 2022. Overall, in these 2 years, I didn't find a substantial change in obesity prevalence, but some substantial changes occurred. In fact, the 17% of this sample reported an increase of 5 kilos or more, and 1/3 of the sample reported a decrease in physical activity of 4 hours per week or more. Again, I found a strong association between a substantial increase in body weight or a decrease in physical activity and an impairment in mental health. So the adults that increased body weight or decreased physical activity in the 2 years from the beginning of the pandemic also impaired their quality of life, their quality of sleep, and increased their anxiety and depressive symptoms. I also assess what has been the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic in the older adults from northern Italy using a cross-sectional study conducted in 2020, where older adults were asked to report their physical activity habits at the moment of the interview and 1 year before. Again, I found that older adults who reported a decrease in physical activity were those who increased their depressive symptoms, anxiety symptoms, and also decreased their quality of life and their quality and quantity of sleep. My last project aimed to assess what is today the current interest of medical literature in obesity and in general in preventable behavioral risk factors. At the beginning, I focused on the 4 main journals of general medicine, so Lancet, JAMA, BMJ, and the New England Journal of Medicine, and I conducted a systematic review. I took all the publications from 2022 from these 4 journals, and they were more than 1,000, and I screened them and classified them according to if they dealt with excess body weight, obesity, and in general preventable behavioral risk factors. And I found that in 2022, among these 4 journals, the 4% of the publications dealt with obesity and an 8% with behavioral risk factors. Then I widened my analysis considering all the publications available in PubMed from the last 30 years, and I designed specific search strings to catch all the publications on preventable behavioral risk factors and specifically on obesity and excess body weight. And as you can see from the graph, the proportion of publications on excess body weight increased from 1993 to 2015, reaching 2%, and then slightly decreased. Similarly, per publications on preventable behavioral risk factors, the proportion of publications on preventable behavioral risk factors increased, reaching the 6% in 2014, and then decreased. So in conclusion, my first study on the prevalence and determinants of obesity in Europe revealed that in many European countries, obesity prevalence is still very high, and some efforts are required to contrast the obesity epidemic. The study on children and adolescents revealed the strong role of families in the development of childhood obesity and poor physical activity, and the strong association between living with obesity and having an impaired mental health. The study on the pandemic period, the two studies on the pandemic periods revealed that in emergency periods, there are some subgroups of the population that are disproportionately affected. And my last project on the relevance of preventable behavioral risk factors in medical literature revealed that the prevalence of articles on these topics is low and declining since in the last decade. These are the publications from my projects. And thank you all. And I give the word back to the prorector.
Thank you very much for your clear presentation. We will now start with the opposition. And the opposition will be opened by Professor Bosma. He was the chair of the assessment committee of your thesis. He's professor of social epidemiology at Maastricht University.
Thank you. Dear candidate, let me first congratulate you with this interesting work. And I would also like to include the supervision team in this praise. You have examined an important challenge for public health, which is an increasing number of people with overweight and even obesity. And you provided information on one of the most important determinants, which is physical activity. Looking at various European countries before and after the COVID-19 pandemic, and looking at various demographic groups, looking at this, what strikes me again is the finding that people with low socioeconomic position have increased risks of overweight and obesity. It's good how you propose specific attention, ultimately, specific attention to these vulnerable groups and efforts at aiming to curb the obesity epidemic. My question relates to the socioeconomic inequalities in overweight and obesity. Knowing that in previous times, in the Netherlands, for example, but also in the UK, maybe in the 1950s or something like that, the socioeconomic differences in overweight and obesity looked completely opposite. The people with a high socioeconomic position, they had the most overweight and the most obesity because it was maybe seen as a sign of wealth, of doing well in society. And I'm similarly also with smoking. Also that was first considered chic in the higher socioeconomic status groups. And there is some evidence that these associations are still apparent in the Mediterranean countries. Yes. And now I wonder whether in your findings, because generally you find people with a low socioeconomic position, you find that throughout a little bit, and they have the most overweight and the most obesity. I wonder whether you did not look or did not find in maybe specific countries, and particularly maybe in men and older men, for example, whether there's an opposite, a reversed association, where higher obesity is more common in higher socioeconomic groups. Did you look at that, or did you find that?
Thank you, highly esteemed opponent, for this question. We didn't specifically did stratified analysis for each countries, but it's true that especially in Eastern countries, this is true. I know that from literature that countries that are more economically disadvantaged are those that still today have this difference, this opposite association of socioeconomic status and obesity. For example, among the countries of my studies, so Bulgaria, Romania, are in particular countries where the higher classes, social classes, have higher obesity prevalence. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, but you did not find it in your own study, and particularly in Italy, because I know of studies that have been done in Spain, for example, mm-hmm. where it is known that, the Mediterranean countries, in Spain, where women from higher socioeconomic status groups still think smoking is chic. It looks good.
Yeah.
It gives you some prestige or some standing, some status. But did you not find something in your own data in Italy with overweight? Or?
No, in our data in Italy we found an indirect association of obesity and socioeconomic status, yes.
Yeah, but you did not do a stratified analysis?
No, we didn't. No. We could do them, maybe. And in the future, and maybe, yes, we will.
Could have a look. It would be interesting to see how social factors indeed can also have, or cultural factors can also have an effect on overweight and obesity.
And I work in a laboratory of lifestyles. So during these years, I had the opportunity to study different types of lifestyles, including smoking, alcohol abuse, and gambling. And the results were quite always in the same direction, that a lower level of education is associated to a worse lifestyle, let's say. Yeah. But we could do stratified analysis by social
maybe
class.
Maybe looking in men, older men, for example.
Yeah, okay, yes.
I have maybe another question also, but it's a bit related. Professor Makkerbach from the Netherlands, but he's well known internationally. Mm-hmm. He also found that socioeconomic differences in health in general are smallest in the Mediterranean countries, including, I think, also a data set he used from Italy. So he found that socioeconomic differences in health are smallest. And I wonder whether you, in your data, I know you did not specifically have the topic on the inequalities, but still I wonder whether you, because you also compare countries, whether you found smaller socioeconomic inequalities in this case, overweight and obesity in Italy, compared to the Netherlands or Germany or Latvia?
One of the main characteristics of Italy, as I was saying in my presentation, is the north-south gradient. So northern areas are those with lower obesity prevalences and southern with higher. And one of the main reasons of this is the socioeconomic level, the different socioeconomic level of the different parts of Italy. So again, I would say that there is a strong association in Italy between socioeconomic status.
On average, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, but indeed you say that you cannot compare the north and the south of Italy, and you cannot throw them together. Mm-hmm. But still, I wonder, because Makkerbach has one of the explanations for the smaller socioeconomic differences in Italy still, on average, compared to other countries in Europe, he says it might be maybe the diet.
Yes, probably yes. We have a big advantage in Italy to have this dietary tradition that is, well, in each such economic class is
Protective.
Yes, protective. So probably this can lead to a lower difference in such economic classes.
You think it's plausible?
Yes,
that
it is.
I have one other factor that Mackerbach calls. He thinks that maybe also social support works in a similar way to reduce the socioeconomic inequalities in health and maybe also overweight. That in Italy, for example, do you think that social support could equally contribute as dietary factors, a Mediterranean diet?
Yes, for sure, it can contribute to decrease the differences and the inequalities. Yes, I would say that it can be another reason to reduce the differences that in other countries are stronger. Yes.
In the sense that people in other countries are more individualized, and that in Italy there is maybe some backup of a more pleasant social network and social support.
Yeah. Yes.
Did you also look at these factors? It's maybe a completely different topic, but
well, no, I didn't. In my studies, I didn't assess this. Yes, but
okay.
Maybe we could.
Okay, maybe then the next time.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I give the back.
Thank you, Professor Bosma. The opposition will be continued by Professor Martinez Sanchez, Professor of Epidemiology and Public Health at Barcelona International University of Catalonia in Spain. Thank you for coming to Maastricht.
Thank you so much. Congratulations, Chiara, for your PhD, for your writing PhD, and also the presentation. I would like to share this congratulations for the professor, for the supervisor, Professor Van de Brandt and Professor O'Donnell, and also Dr. Silvano Gallus for the work conducted during your PhD. Congratulations because you are working in 5 different articles, 4 published, another under review, with 3 different kinds of methodology, epidemiology methodology used, and they feel the hard working during your PhD. I would like to know what is the implication of during your PhD in these 3 different kind of projects. Not only the data analysis, it's obviously you have performed the data analysis of the database and also write the article. I would like to know if you are involved in other part. Also, you have involved in a European project, like tax project. It's a very important project with financial of the European Union. But I would like to know if you have the opportunity to involve in some part of the project to have new knowledge to perform a new project. I would like to know, to hear you, what is your implication in another part of the 3 different projects you are involved in your PhD.
Okay. As I was saying, I work in a laboratory that studies lifestyles. So I'm working not only on obesity, but in general, I had the opportunity to have an overview on different types of lifestyles and to collaborate in European projects in these years. I think that we are thinking about what will be the next steps and the future projects I will be involved in, but for sure they will include the wide range of of lifestyles. And in particular for obesity, I think that the main implications of my first study on obesity was to give updated estimates on what is today the prevalence of obesity in many European countries, because monitoring and still monitoring this indicator obesity is important to see if what has been done until now, it has been effective or not. Then I'm involved in the two studies on COVID-19 are part of long longitudinal studies that we are still gaining data, so I will analyze the new follow-ups to see the long-term effects of the pandemic in the Italian populations. And yes.
And what did you learn about that? If you are present a project now for the obesity, what kind of project do you present with this learn?
Do you mean for the future?
Yes, for the future.
For now, I didn't present. I didn't present yet a new project, but with Silvano, I think we will soon participate in new European calls, and so yes.
Thank you. Another question. Congratulations for the topic. Obesity is a big problem in the Europe, and particularly in children, in adolescent and children population. Obesity is a very big public health problem.
Yes.
One new determinant of health is the screen time, but not the screen time, the time of the children spending the screen time, but not the old screen time like television or video game. I calling about the new screen time, a smartphone.
Yeah.
Smartphone, for example, children have the first smartphone so early, between 8 and 10 years old,
yeah.
and also have very important effect on obesity, sedentarism, diet, and also mental health. In your presentation, you say
yeah.
in a lot of time the impact of the mental health of the obesity.
Yeah.
And also you have a picture in one of your slides, and other people with a mobile phone have a picture of the other kids.
Yeah.
I would like to know, what is do you explain in some of the article, the screen time is another
yeah.
factor to associate with the obesity
yes.
of the children and adolescents. I would like to know in depth, what is your opinion of this new determinant of health of the screen time, particularly a smartphone, of the children in the problem of the obesity, and also in the problem of mental health related with obesity.
Okay. Yes, thank you, highly esteemed opponent. And yes, the problem of screens is a huge problem in youth. And in the last documents that I read about the latest data after the COVID-19 pandemic have shown that this has even increased, in particular in Italy. In fact, the data set from which I took data, the Occhio alla Salute, is part of a European project. And in 2022, they revealed that screen time has increased a lot after the pandemic. So this will be for sure an issue to monitor and to try, and are needed more policies to restrict and more also parental education to restrict screen time for children, because not only this leads to not only smaller time dedicated to physical activity, but screen time is also associated to other unhealthy habits, like for example, eating snacks. And so there are many factors that concur with obesity related to screen time. And for sure, the larger availability of smartphones, and so increases the exposure to these devices.
I agree with you. The impact of the COVID pandemic in the increase of the screen time is heavy not only in Italy, in other rest of the country in Europe, and also the relationship with the junk food intake, and also the reduce the adherence of Mediterranean diet. The literature say that, and we have in a big problem related with another traditional risk factors like obesity and also mental health. And my last question is, you have a lot of important results about the obesity. Your study show new results, and we have to transfer to the public health, to the intervention to public health. It's like maybe like your last article to review of the primary intervention in the big journal of the health. And what you learn, or we have to learn, to transfer, to change the obesity in the children and adults. We have to implement new public health implementation, primary and secondary maybe.
Yes.
What do you say? What do you recommend us?
Yes, I believe that all my PhD program and my presentation stresses the fact that social inequalities and acting when the people are very young is essential to protect people from developing obesity. So, for example, educational programs to teach children and to healthy habits, like healthy dietary habits and correct physical activity are among the main important things that should be promoted. And also acting in schools, I think, is one of the main areas where to defeat the social inequalities, because we saw that the role of families, of unhealthy habits in families concur to childhood obesity development. So to protect children from developing obesity, and a way to do that is to provide them with an opportunity in schools where all of them can have the same inputs to learn how to behave well. So one of the main implications is to put attention in schools, I think. And for my last project, we saw that it should be paid more attention in general in literature on preventable behavioral risk factors and in obesity, because this interest is decreasing, but non-communicable diseases are increasing. So there is this gap of non-communicable diseases whose risk factors are strongly associated to lifestyle habits, and so research should be conducted on these topics to try to stop this increasing trend.
Thank you so much for your answer, and congratulations again for your work.
Thank you, Professor Martinez Sanchez. The opposition will be continued by Professor Sassi, Professor of International Health Policy and Economics at Imperial College Business School in London, and he's present online. Professor Sassi.
Good morning, and thank you for a very clear presentation and for your extensive work on this very difficult topic. I would like to ask a couple of questions. The first one is in connection with the comments that I made in my review of the initial version of the thesis, in which I pointed out that there is bias in many of the data that are reported on obesity, both childhood obesity. I mean, childhood obesity is even more complex, actually, because there are different definitions of obesity that are used for children, but bias is also there in data on obesity in adults. And bias is, of course, not limited to data, epidemiological data on obesity. There is a major issue about the reporting of dietary data, which is also a major factor in obesity research. So I would like, I mean, you have addressed those comments well in the revised version of your dissertation, but I would like to hear from you after going through all this work, what is your perception of the relevance of bias in data that should in principle guide policy on obesity, and what you think the impacts are of these bias on obesity policy?
Thank you, highly esteemed opponent, for your question. So you're asking what are the implications of the biases according to related to the differences in measurements for obesity? Am I right?
All sorts of bias that you have in epidemiological research on obesity, including bias in the reporting of dietary data, which is, of course, no less important than bias in the measurement of obesity. So I would like to know what your perception is after doing all this work, what your perception is of the importance of this bias, and to what extent these bias affects action to tackle obesity.
Okay. Thank you for your question. The study, I found some issues in the study of obesity because in particular for children, I use data from two main surveillance systems, because both Ocula Salute and the other data source was the HBSC, are Italian survey systems that are connected to European systems and are among the main important, but they are designed quite differently. And so the data were hardly comparable, because for example, on one side I had measured data for children, and for adults I had self-reported measurements, and so the two information were hardly comparable. And also for this data on adults, most of the available data sets are based on self-reported information, like my study, and this for sure can lead to a bias in the estimates, because there are some countries that provide less true information compared to other countries, and in particular Italy is it has been shown as one of the countries that misreports more height and weight, maybe for reason because it's not accepted to provide to say that the weight is high enough. So men tend to increase their height and women tend to decrease their weight, and so this can lead to biases and to unfair estimates that can lead to wrong conclusions. And so yes, there is reluctance in providing what is the truth, and this leads to...
Sorry to interrupt you, but what are the policy implications of all this? What is the impact on a country's ability to design policies that are effective in tackling obesity?
That we don't have the right picture of what is the situation, because if we don't have the correct view of and the correct estimates of a thing, maybe we judge some policies more effective than others, but this is just because some results are biased.
Does that lead in bias in the targeting of specific population groups that would need action the most?
Yes, exactly, because if actions are not directed to the right subgroups, because data reveals something that is not correct, then they become ineffective, and yes.
Okay, thank you. I have a second question on the work that you've done on the pandemic, the effects on the pandemic on obesity. So obesity for a very long time and still today is considered a very complex problem to address from a policy point of view. There's been a commentary published in the BMJ a few years ago that even defined obesity as a wicked problem because it's not only very complex but also highly resistant to solutions, particularly policy solutions. Now, during the pandemic, we have seen changes in obesity in some countries, both upwards, but then downwards after the pandemic, which have been really major, something that, policies have never been able to achieve. Admittedly, the changes that have occurred during the pandemic, the environmental changes were quite exceptional, but still, they've shown that obesity can change even in a major way during the space of a couple of years. So why is policy not achieving the same effects?
Thank you for your question. Well, it's a very good question. You mean why policies don't have a strong effects if we have seen that the COVID-19 pandemic had led to a substantial change instead? Because I think that to have efficient policies, there must be strong commitment and from many sides. I think that one of the main issue with policies is that many actors should be committed in one direction, and this is not always what happens, and so this is why policies tend to be weak and tend to not have strong effects.
This is certainly true, but during the pandemic, no one asked anyone to make any commitments, and yet, these changes occurred. I mean, I'm particularly interested in the changes downwards in obesity rates that we have observed, after a spike in obesity in the initial part of the pandemic. So there are some countries where obesity rates have, in many groups, gone back to where they went before, despite, as I say, the spike during the pandemic. So, as I say, there was no commitment made by anyone. There were simply changes in, people's environment that have led to those changes in obesity. Why policy cannot mimic the same effects, cannot produce the same effects?
Yes, I would say yes, again, because during COVID, there was no choice to decide what to do. So.
But after COVID, there was. After COVID was a choice. People could have, continued to adopt the same habits as during the pandemic, or could have gone, back to different habits. So they obviously made a choice. I mean, is there anything about the way policies are designed that might, prevent them from achieving the same level of effectiveness?
I think that after the COVID-19 pandemic, that it has been not a confined period. People tended to go back to their habits, and so So
okay.
this.
Thank you very much. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Professor Sassi. The opposition will be continued by Dr. Gubbels, Associate Professor at Maastricht University.
Thank you. I also want to congratulate you and your team on this interesting thesis. The studies are complementary and they are very thorough, and also on a timely and very relevant topic. I do have some questions for you, specifically regarding chapter 3, where you look at the association between physical activity and mental health, and you clearly see a link. And in your chapter, you discuss mental health issues as a consequences of a higher BMI and low physical activity, with bullying, for instance, being the proposed mediating mechanism. But it's a cross-sectional study.
Yeah.
So I want to challenge you to think about the reverse, whether that also could be true, that mental health maybe causes decreases in physical activity.
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for this question. Yes, one of the main limitations of the study on children and adolescents was the fact that it is a cross-sectional study, so you cannot understand which is the direction of the association. And this is true for all the studies that I conducted in my thesis on the association between mental health and obesity or poor physical activity. I think that both for children and adolescents, there is a bidirectional association between mental health and living poor physical activity, but also the condition of living with obesity. So it is possible that it is known that some mental disorders can lead to obesity or poor physical activity. In fact, having symptoms of depression can lead to a lack of desire to move and to have social relationships, and so to have an active lifestyle. So I think that also for children and adolescents, this is particularly true. So it is possible that the association is also that adolescents who have poor mental health, because also adolescence is a period of transition when mental health plays an important role, and yes, and impaired mental health is not something rare in adolescents, and so it's possible that this has caused a decrease in physical activity.
So what would be the implications of that? Because in your chapter you say we need to focus on physical activity and wait to prevent mental health problems, but what are the implications of the reverse also being true?
Is that if we design and we policies or programs in school to prevent mental health impairment, with, for example, doing programs that try to integrate all the adolescents, this can prevent them from becoming with mental health conditions, and this can lead them to have also an active life. So it is important also to consider mental health in school programs and in general.
Would you then specifically focus on the groups that already have mental health problems, like a high-risk group for weight and physical activity problems?
No, in these 3 years, no, I didn't. But I would like to, because I found that in general lifestyles are strongly associated with mental health, and so I think that it would be very, very interesting to do that.
Just to follow up on that, you say as one of the implications that we need to make parents aware of this association, aware of the risks of low physical activity and BMI for the mental health. Do you think that awareness is the problem, that people don't know that physical activity and a high BMI are unhealthy?
No, no, I don't think. I think that almost all the people are aware that physical, especially in Europe, are aware that physical activity is important, but probably there are many other factors associated to reduced physical activity. For example, also a poor availability of cheap solutions for people is one of the reasons for reduced physical activity. In fact, maybe families with a lower socioeconomic status cannot afford some sport facilities for their adolescents, and, for example, also cannot provide healthy food, and so this could be a reason. So one other action could be try to give incentives and subsidies to families with a low socioeconomic status to let their children be able to and give them the opportunity to do physical activity. Another reason could be related to the fact that the increasing urbanization leads to a decreased opportunity for physical activity, and so also the planning of an urbanization that increases the opportunities for children and adolescents to practice physical activity is important.
Yeah, so I think it's a good idea to focus also on the physical and economic environment, the availability, but those are mostly difficult to change. Change a city, change the availability of opportunities to be physically active. So in those parents, getting back to them, what should we focus on with those parents or those families if we cannot change the world around them?
Yeah. Well, some educational programs, even if parents are aware, it doesn't know that it is possible that they had not been given the right motivations. Maybe they know that physical activity is correct, but they don't know what can prevent. And so maybe an educational program could be.
Okay. Do I have time for one extra?
No. I would like to give the last opponent also some time. Thank you very much, Dr. Gubbels. The opposition will be continued by Dr. Brands, clinical epidemiologist at Maastricht University Medical Center.
Thank you. Dear candidate, first of all, I would like to congratulate you and also your promotion team with this excellent work. I've read the thesis with great interest, and I think you have provided a thorough overview of the changes in prevalence of obesity in Europe, but also in Italy specifically, using very rich data sets. What I especially appreciated was the focus on potential determinants and the role of COVID-19 you observed on the prevalence of obesity and also physical activity, which you were able to answer using longitudinal data. However, I also know by experience using observational data still comes with a lot of challenges. And one of those challenges is also about saying something about causality. And therefore, the first question I had was focused on chapter 4. And in that specific chapter, you mentioned in the introduction that there are several indications that the COVID-19 pandemic might have boosted the trend of increased prevalence of obesity. And you even mentioned the term COVID-obesity. And of course, you questioned those trends, and therefore you investigated the long-term effects of COVID-19 pandemic on weight gain and physical activity. However, I think this is still a causal question. And in the ideal situation, we would, for instance, have two groups. One group that is exposed to COVID-19 pandemic and a group that doesn't. And more ideal, that would be random, but of course that's not the real situation. So I think indeed the longitudinal data is the best next thing. And then indeed you observed an increase of overweight and a decrease in physical activity during that COVID period. But I'm not completely satisfied with the conclusion that this is the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that you would observe maybe a similar effect if there was no COVID during that period, or whether you've performed the same analysis between 2015 and 2017, because you see that increase already emerging from 1990. So I was thinking about what are your arguments based on your expertise to say that this is...
Thank you, highly esteemed opponent, for the question. Well, I think that the larger part of the changes were due to the COVID-19 pandemic, because we see that after 2 years from the COVID-19 pandemic, but also later on, because I had the opportunity to see the latest data of the follow-ups of this longitudinal study, we see a renormalization of both obesity and excess body weight and physical activity. So it seems that things are renormalizing. So I would say that the changes in that context were mainly due to the fact that people were forced to stay at home, and this for sure led to a decrease in physical activity. And so I agree that maybe part of the changes, so maybe people that maintained a higher birth weight could be due to other reasons, and maybe these changes would have occurred independently. But on average, I would say that is due to that huge moment that substantially changed the lifestyles of people. And so, yes, I would.
Yeah, so you're really convinced that it boosted the prevalence?
Yes,
yeah.
I think so.
All right, thank you. The second question I had was based on the statement you made in the discussion, but that I noticed it as a theme through your whole thesis, in which you state that the European policymakers should plan and implement preventive intervention using a so-called population approach.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, what do you mean specifically with a population approach? That was not clear.
Well, I think that for a policy to be effective, it has to involve the many stakeholders, but also the population has to be put at the center. And so, as I was saying, educational programs, both in schools but also for adults, could be useful. So I think that policies in general, to be effective, cannot just come down from governments, but have to be in some way holistic. So have to be yes, have to include also the population through different methods.
Yeah. Okay, so the concern I have a little bit, and it's also a bit related to the questions that were asked earlier, I also have the feeling that the population approach also means one size fits all. And if I just look at myself, for instance, I think I'm reasonably educated what is healthy, and I know what exercise. I have parks in my neighborhood, and I can do all those things regularly, but still, if I'm in a stressful situation, it still requires some effort, because if I don't want to exercise, I still have to motivate myself to go and exercise. I have to prepare all those healthy meals, which also requires some planning and investment. So what should be, based on that population approach, what could you offer if there's, for instance, a major health crisis such as the COVID-19 pandemic? What would you offer to keep me motivated to stay healthy instead of education? That's, for instance.
Well, I think that one of the main effective way for all the people for all the people to have the possibility to behave and have a good lifestyle is trying to reduce inequalities, so that nobody feels that his effort is harder than for someone else. So this could be an opportunity. So in general, one of the main, I think, achievements should be try to reduce some inequalities for the determinants of obesity, so that, yes, a population feels not on one side, I would say that.
Yeah. And do you think that the population approach is suitable for that? Because you mentioned informing people and.
I think so. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. I think I have one final question, and that is based on the presentation you gave, Leslie, because you did the systematic review, and you indeed saw an increase in the relevance of obesity and also the risk factors.
Yeah.
And then it peaked at 2013, and it remained decreased or remained stable. Do you have any ideas how that can? What's the cause of that peak or stabilization?
Yes, I think that the increase seen in the previous period could be due to the fact of the increasing diseases associated to these lifestyles, and so the increasing interest. But later on, I think that in the last decade, there has been... Okay. There has been a shift toward more interest of medical literature on treatments rather than prevention, because on one side it is more easily understandable the impact of treatments rather than prevention, and so it is possible that yes, the interest in prevention has became less and less important.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chiara Stival, the time appointed for defending your thesis has passed. The degree committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis and your defense. I request that you and your company await the results of our deliberations and our return in this room.
Thank you.
The PhD defense has now ended. The degree committee will debate the candidate's performance behind closed doors. This process usually takes about 10 minutes.
Long road to the south side. 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and that. On the line, I know you know that I can't read your mind. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. Cause I'll go the extra mile. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and that. On the dash, got my laces tied. Long road, I don't waste no time. Break rules because fate decides. With the team and we chase the light. I make a move, fall down, shake it off. I hate to lose, bad branch, break it off. No room for negativity, praise and love. Prepare for deep part cause we're taking off. Take the mileage, traveling so far from home. Gathering knowledge, other connections. I put the time in to get everything I ever hoped for. It's a challenge and we all in. It's a better future that we go for. And even though these nights seem long, I know that I am never on my own. Know you've won the battle once you've grown. side. 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and that. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and that. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. 'Cause I'll go the extra mile.
Please be seated.
Chiara Stival, the degree committee here present has assessed the quality of your thesis and your defense. In view of its positive verdict and taking into account your previous qualifications, the degree committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. Professor van der Brand is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university custom. I invite your supervisor to now take the floor.
Please all rise.
Do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times, to be careful and honest, transparent, independent and responsible?
Yes, I promise.
Okay, then by the authority vested in us by law and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present, I hereby confer upon you, Chiara Stival, the degree of doctor and grant you all rights attached by custom and law. As evidence of this, I now present you with the degree certificate signed by the rector, the secretary and the other members of the committee and affixed with the official seal of the university.
Please be seated.
Yeah, Dr. Chiara, well done. Congratulations. I was the supervisor from a distance in another country, and I'm very glad that Silvano Galles, who was your daily supervisor, is also here, and he will therefore speak the laudatio. You can use that.
Wait, I need my glasses. Today we celebrate an extraordinary milestone in the life and career of an exceptional individual, Chiara Stival, or as we can now proudly say, Dr. Chiara Stival. Her journey to this achievement is a testament to perseverance, dedication, and the remarkable evolution of a scholar and a leader in research. As I reflect on the path that brought us here, I'm reminded of the first time I met Chiara, more than a decade ago, 10 years ago. I have met her since we shared, and we still share, a close friendship with the special family. A few years later, I learned that she was doing a master's program in biostatistics at the University of Milano Bicocca, a field where I had many professional connections. Chiara approached my lab with a clear purpose. She wanted to immerse herself in meaningful work, apply her knowledge to real-world problems, and lay the foundation for her future. She wasn't seeking a thesis project, a job, or any shortcut. Instead, she simply wanted the opportunity to gain experience. I immediately recognized her potential and decided to invest in her development. I remember suggesting a project to her, one inspired by the director of my institute. It aimed to replicate a Swiss study analyzing whether TV food advertisements targeted at children in Italy complied with the European guidelines, the guidelines of the WHO. Why the project was intriguing, it was interesting, for sure. It involved the time-consuming and even tedious and boring task because she had to view and classify over 200 hours of TV programming. So I hesitated to suggest it to Chiara, but Chiara's response surprised and impressed me. I've never done gavetta in my life. It will be useful for me. Gavetta is an Italian term referring to the hard foundational work undertaken at the start of one's career. With enthusiasm, Chiara took on the challenge and completed it successfully. Her dedication paid off, culminating in a publication in Public Health Nutrition, which is a quite good journal. And after obtaining her master's degree, Chiara broadened her horizons, working as a researcher in Australia and later as a data scientist in industry. But corporate work didn't fully satisfy her. She felt the undeniable call of research. When she returned to my lab seeking guidance, it was a privilege to welcome her back and offer her the opportunity to pursue a PhD. The decision has proven to be one of the most rewarding of my career. As you all have seen in the presentation of Chiara, her doctoral research on obesity in Italy has made significant contributions to this critical field. Her PhD journey was not without challenges. When my primary collaborator, Alessandra Lugo, went on maternity leave, Chiara stepped in to support the lab's statistical analysis, all while progressing with her PhD program, with her own research. This period was a trial by fire, but it allowed her to acquire invaluable skills and knowledge, which further enhanced her growth as a researcher. During her PhD, Chiara also embraced probably the life's greatest joy and challenge, becoming a mother to Margherita. And of course, as I also know, balancing the demands of doctoral research or the work with the responsibilities of parenthood is not easy. Yet Chiara managed it with extraordinary grace. She completed her project with only a slight delay, a remarkable achievement that speaks to her resilience and exceptional work ethic. Chiara's contribution extends far beyond her academic achievement. Her generosity and collaborative spirit have enriched our lab, fostering an environment of support and inspiration. Looking ahead, her role in the lab will only grow more prominent. Chiara will in fact continue to contribute to all aspects of our work with a special focus on leading our research on obesity, particularly in Italy. And with her passion and dedication, she is destined to become one of the country's foremost experts in this field, a vision we are actively supporting through our grant applications we are conducting right now. On behalf of everyone here, I extend my congratulations on your remarkable achievement, Chiara. We look forward to witnessing the incredible contributions you will make in this next chapter of your career. It is with immense pride and joy that we celebrate the success and promising future of Dr. Chiara Stival. Thank you.
Dear Dr. Stival, also on behalf of Maastricht University, I would like to congratulate you with the degree you have acquired. Also, congratulations to your partner who supported you as a paranymph, and your family, friends, and colleagues that supported you on this PhD journey one way or the other, and hopefully present online. Congratulations to all. I'd like to also congratulate the supervisors with this nice PhD defense, and I'd like to thank the members of the committee present here and online for their contribution to this PhD defense. Your contribution is very much appreciated by the university. Thank you for that. Yeah, for you, it's now the end of the journey. You have reached your goal, obtaining a PhD. I hope you're satisfied with the way you were able to defend your thesis here. And yeah, now it's time to relax and enjoy the rest of the day and what you have achieved so far. And I wish you a lot of success with your further career. And with this, I close this academic ceremony. Thank you.
Dr. Chiara, please come forward. Supervisors, please, bring the degree. You can also join, please. We're going to take a nice picture. Please come and join. Chiara, come a bit forward. You can use that